and make use of every available moment of our business time today. We have several people that are ready to speak at mic, so please come back to your seats as soon as possible. Let me commend you again and again and again on your professionalism, your decorum, your demeanor. While you're settling in, let me just give you a reminder, please, that any amendments that you're wishing to make to this or any other document as we move along, please send those to gamotions@churchofgod.org. gamotions@churchofgod.org. That helps our team to be right on top of all of this as you're sharing these motions. Gentlemen, we have almost an hour that we can work before our lunch break. Let's make good use of it. To remind you of where we are, we have the entire motion before us. We are back to the main motion. Please be reminded that you have enacted a limit of speeches, 6 for and 6 against. Currently, there are 2 speeches in favor. Against this motion. There are 2 speeches against this motion. So keep that in mind as we move toward the limit. And then at that point in time, there will be a vote on this motion. We're ready now to go to speaker at mic 9. Let me ask you once again, please settle as quickly as you can and be seated. And our speaker at mic 9 has been waiting very, very patiently to the point of forgetting why he came to the microphone in the first place. But I think he's been reminded. Speaker at mic 9, let's go.
Steve Hall, Cleveland, Tennessee, and I do appreciate the admonition in James to say pray for wisdom. I prayed this morning and he led me to comfortable shoes. So that's a good thing. I'm talking about I would like to offer an amendment to the main motion.
State your amendment and the location, please.
Location is line 96. It would be an addition to the end. And the motion would be furthering the commitment, we commit, that appropriate Church of God departments curate biblical sex education resources designed principally and practically for use in Church of God regions, churches, and educational institutions. If I get a second, I'll speak to that.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Do you mind to state it, please, though, but one more time, state it so our team can get it.
That appropriate Church of God departments curate biblical sex education resources designed principally and practically for use in Church of God regions, churches, and educational institutions.
All right, please continue.
As a 38-year veteran of pastoring, we've often come to the General Assembly and created mandates that require pastors to address particular things. It's always been my interest that if we are going to require pastors to hold certain principles in place, that we resource them. And so however this motion ends up being refined, I would appreciate it as a pastor of a local church, educational institution, those things, to have the appropriate trusted leaders we've put in place to design, to curate, according to what we refine here, clear resources that will help us honor the requirement of these motions. That's the essence of what my heart is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me request one more time a reading of your amendment. The reason I'm doing that is because on my screen there is some confusion to what I'm reading here. So would you read it one more time? I'll ask our team to pay very special attention, please.
Sure. that appropriate Church of God departments curate biblical sex education resources designed principally and practically for use in Church of God regions, churches, and educational institutions.
All right, we're trying to catch up with you. You've heard the amendment. It has been seconded. Let's speak now to the amendment. We'll go to speaker at mic 12. Are you speaking to the amendment? Speaker at mic 12, I see no one there. All right, let's go to speaker at mic 2. Are you speaking to the amendment?
Main motion.
Speaker at mic 3, there is a question at mic 3.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thad Stubblefield, Beaufort, South Carolina. I would like to ask a question of clarification on the main motion.
Let's hear the question, then we'll see if we can.
What will this do in the case of many pastors' wives who are teachers by trade or child care workers working at a facility owned and operated possibly by a gender-affirming church and or the public school system?
Mr. Speaker, I am so sorry. This has become a least favorite term among many in this body, but it says what it says.
That's what I assumed.
That would be a hypothetical situation for me to try to attempt to address, so I apologize. Let's move now to speaker at mic 2. What is your, oh, you're waiting for the main motion. Speaker at mic 10, please. Are you speaking for or against?
Speaking to the main motion.
All right, speaker at mic 6, are you speaking to the amendment?
Speaking to the main motion.
All right, speaker at mic 8, are you speaking to the amendment?
Main motion.
Speaker at mic 11, are you speaking to the amendment?
Main motion.
Mic 5,
I just have a question.
let's hear the question.
I just want to know why this whole document has been brought to us. There's no rationale. We already have coverage under a previous resolution. We already have had it brought up to us that part of this is included in our practical commitments. I just want to have an understanding, brother, of why the executive committee thought that this had to be dealt with now and in this way, and then where they intended for this to be placed in our minutes.
Just simply put, it was processed through the executive council and presented to this body. It went through the general council agenda committee, and it had proper processing, so it's here before us today.
With no rationale.
No rationale that I have here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move then to speaker at mic 4. Are you speaking for or against?
I want to offer an amendment to the same section, but not specifically to the current amendment.
All right, we will need to move on. Speaker at mic 1, are you speaking for or against?
Against.
Please continue.
Thank you, Brother Moderator. Joey Grizzle, North Georgia. I agree in principle with the amendment, but I disagree for pragmatic reasons. There seems to be a lot of headwind to this motion, and we need it to pass. And I recognize the desire to perfect as an ideal concept, but I refer to the argument that has been made against this motion, which actually, in my opinion, makes amendments somewhat unnecessary. And that is that the rationale for the motion is redundant. It's a repeat of words we've already used and already approved. Going back and trying to fix language that has already served as a resolution for our church is not going to advance the one cluster of sentences that remain absolutely essential and important for the church today. And that is, our ministers and our employees, our teachers and our academic institutions should not be employed at churches or at religious organizations that agree or accommodate gay weddings or affirmations of gay lifestyles. If we're going to get to that, we have to avoid continually making amendments. Perfect is about to become the enemy of good. I say, let's get back to this motion and pass it so that we can move on to other items that face our church. This is a good motion, and we need to get to the motion past all of these perfecting ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's go to the speaker at mic 11. Are you speaking for or against?
Main motion.
Speaker at mic 4, speaking for or against the amendment?
I'm waiting to speak to an amendment that is not part of the current amendment.
All right, speaker at mic 7, are you speaking for or against the current amendment?
Speaking for.
Please continue.
Brother Moderator, Jonathan Augustine, Central Europe and the Balkans. I'm very happy to hear this motion that has been offered because I think it represents what we're all trying to do. I don't hear any of us speaking in favor of LGBTQ ideology. We're wanting to stand against that unanimously. But I think as we do that, we need to do more than just make statements against. We truly need to get about the work of redemptively engaging this harvest. And certainly, I think we've heard that during this day. We've heard heartbreaking stories of fathers and who have shared stories about sons, and we heard stories about people in their congregations and redemptively engaging them, and the challenge of doing that. We need to equip our people to redemptively engage this sin culture. And the gospel of Jesus Christ is sufficient, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ is sufficient to redeem people from this bondage of sin in the LGBT community. What we haven't done yet is effectively equip our folks to know how to engage it. They're struggling with whether I should go, whether I should stay. How do I engage that? We need to produce materials. In no other area of the church do we expect people to respond in obedience without giving them the tools to do it, without giving them biblical teaching to understand this is the way to walk in the way of truth. So I applaud this motion, and I encourage this body to carefully consider passing it, because we don't want just another statement to say we're against. We need to say we're going to do something about it. Throughout this church, from every church in the Church of God, in every continent, in the entire world, and I say this as a missionary, we are going to teach people how to redemptively engage this culture that is, they have ambassadors, they're on a warpath. We feel under attack. We need better than a defensive response. We need to turn and go on the offense. We need to prepare biblical materials and put it in the hands of every child at every level of society. Start all the way from the children's department, because the Creator has a design and it's perfect. And throughout the Church of God, we need to be preaching and teaching it so that every person doesn't have to wonder, what am I going to do when this happens? We've already prepared them for it. We do that in every other part of the church. We need to do it in this area, and we need to reach this harvest to the glory of Jesus Christ. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a question at microphone 5. Let's hear the question.
I'm sorry, it's to the main motion.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to the speaker at mic 12.
This addresses the main motion.
Speaker at mic 1.
I move previous question on all business before the House.
Previous question on all business before the House. Is there a second? There is a second. Please understand, it is on all business before the House. All right, I will entertain that. If you're in favor of previous question on all business before the House, please stand. You may be seated. If you're against the previous question, please stand. All right, the motion fails. We will continue debate. We're speaking to the amendment that appropriate Church of God departments curate biblical sex education resources designed principally and practically for use in Church of God regions churches, and educational institutions. Are you ready to vote? I think everybody else that's in line has been waiting for other opportunities to speak on other motions. You ready to vote? We're voting on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And the amendment carries. We move back to the main motion. The entire document is before you. Let's go to speaker at mic 2.
Stephen Ford, ordained bishop from Ohio. I'm sent in this change ahead of time. I would like to strike lines 49 through 61 and replace it.
Let's go to the document and see where you're at, please.
Okay.
The technicians could go to line, remind me, please.
49
through
61.
All right. So you want to strike from 49, your amendment by striking 49. There a second?
Second.
There is a second. You may speak to it.
I'd like to replace that with that the Church of God believes in God's perfect design for human sexuality. It does not support the adoption of any self-concept or identity that would be contrary to God's holy purpose in creation and redemption as revealed in Scripture. A person's gender, male or female, is identifiable at birth through anatomical identification or medical evaluation. For individuals born with congenital disabilities where anatomical identification is impossible, transsexual individuals, also known as transgender or trans, are men, women, adolescents, or children who experience an emotional and spiritual or culturally driven incongruence with their gender. We will not support any rationale that would affirm a distorted self-concept that any man, woman, adolescent, or child's gender is different from his or her created, biologically confirmed gender. Genesis 1:27. The Church of God who believes that children are a heritage from the Lord, Psalm 127:3, and that parents are responsible for nurturing children according to God's biblical plan, Proverbs 22:6, Ephesians 5:29, and Ephesians 6:1 through 4. As a result, the Church of God does not support or affirm species identification, also known as furries, in which men, women, adolescents, or children identify as another created species other than human species. The rationale for this is that the language...
Wait just a minute, brother.
Yes.
That is so thorough. I want to make sure that our team has this already. Do we have it? All right, we do have it. I'm going to allow you to speak to it.
Okay. The original statement focused on men and women primarily. However, I have had to deal with adolescents and children that are also dealing with identity dysphoria or identity issues related to their sexual identity. As a pastor and as a counselor, as written in this motion, it does not properly identify all that we would have to deal with as pastors in our churches. This idea, the second part of this, the idea of species identification, is a growing trend among our 25-year-olds and younger. We have children in grade schools and high schools that will dress as animals, and school systems that will allow them to use litter boxes in bathrooms. This is an issue that is going on in our public school systems around our state of Ohio and around this country. If we do not address the whole issue of gender identity and sexualism that is under the umbrella of transsexualism, then we are incorrectly identifying and dealing with this issue. Thank you.
All right, what you have offered here is an amendment by striking and replacing. And as I'm reminded, that is all the way from line, was it 39? 49, I'm sorry, thank you. 49 all the way through 61, and replacing with the paragraph that you have, several paragraphs actually, that you have there. So it was seconded. We now consider this an amendment that we're dealing with. We will have to confine our remarks to this amendment. So let's go in order that I have on my screen. We're going to speaker at mic 10. Are you speaking to this amendment?
Motion for the main motion.
All right, let's go to speaker at mic 8. Are you speaking to this amendment?
Main motion.
Mic 11.
Main motion.
Mic 4.
Third amendment.
Mic 5.
Main motion.
Mic 12.
Separate original motion.
Mic 3.
Main motion.
Mic 7.
Amendment to the main motion.
Mic 6.
I would speak against the amendment.
This amendment. Please continue. Please continue.
My name is Mark Carey from the North Central region. I'm against the amendment because we are adding too many words to an already wordy measure. We heard just a few moments ago from Bishop Coulter about records that were given to us from the history of our movement. And those words are impacting. As I read through lines 1 through 88 of this particular measure, I am wondering what future generations will reflect upon us. We have terminology included in these lines which is outdated, possibly medically incorrect. And it seems to me that the bottom line is the last few lines of the measure, which really don't need all of the preamble. So I would speak against the amendment as it stands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't see anyone else at a mic to speak for or against this amendment. Are you ready to vote? We're voting on the amendment. If we could have that back on the screen, please, as you have seen it earlier. About 3 paragraphs, I believe. Without reading that again, you've had it before you. Are you ready to vote? All in favor of this amendment, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendment is lost. We're back to the main motion. Let's go to speaker at mic 10, please.
Mr. Moderator, I rise to make a motion to strike. However, I do not rise to strike against the lines that some might assume. No, I wish to strike everything preceding line 89 all the way to the words, "We recommend that we adopt the following to be inserted in the General Assembly minutes." In doing so, the motion or resolution would now read as follows. 4, biblical sexuality. We recommend that we adopt the following to be inserted in the General Assembly minutes. We commit that all Church of God leaders, ministers, teachers, and employees defined as credentialed employees or any employees connected with conveying the message of the church and carrying out its mission not be employed by or regularly attend LGBTQIA+ affirming or affiliated churches or religious organizations subject to appropriate polity action. And if you'll allow me to speak to it, I will.
There is a second. You may speak to it.
There has been talk of smoke screens and covert wishes to do away with the very thing to which this motion aspires, namely, teeth in the bite of our ecclesiastical processes of discipline and correction. However, the first 88 lines of this motion are, with respect to its authors, perhaps one of the more skilled smoke screens I have seen deployed on this floor. We are using the language of emotion, holy conviction, and biblical righteousness to convince the body of its need for this motion. While I do believe it is righteous and we need a statement and we need it to be dealt with, we don't need to pass something that is poor because we are emotional about this subject. This will affect our sons and daughters for years to come, and it needs to be addressed well. However, my father is a simple man. I'm simply a first-generation Church of God minister, raised by one of the kindest, godliest, hardworking farmers, business owners, and Church of God laymen I've ever known. He was very plain-spoken, and when he speaks, his words carry weight. So I'm going to attempt to channel that candor, that clarity, and that conciseness right here. It is abundantly clear we want this motion passed for one purpose and one alone. That is lines 89 through 94. I will not muddy the process by giving my thoughts on that particular sentiment. Rather, I would simply say this: brothers, let us be men of character, integrity, and plain speech. If this is what you want, pass this motion as it would read when amended by striking the previous 88 lines of the text that are riddled with errors of doctrine, theology, legality, and terminology. Then we can discuss the issue that is actually going about whether or not the truth we are arguing deserves to be dealt with, without adding all of this redundancy from previous statements and previous resolutions on human sexuality and through veiled statements and efforts to emotionalize this process and make us vote because we know we need to do something. Rather, I move to strike everything above lines 89, amending the process so that we can vote on this particular thing, thereby not wasting the remainder of our day trying to amend something that is so flawed we will not get it right. That being said, sorry, I apologize, Mr. Moderator. That being said, let's not pass a bad motion for the sake of trying to do what we know and we all agree is the right thing to do. For that reason, I ask you to strongly consider voting to strike lines 1 through 88. Thank you.
The chair was going to ask the speaker, you do understand that the portion that you do want to leave has been amended to include that appropriate Church of God departments curate biblical sex education, etc.
That is correct. I should have added that to my notes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. All right, you have the amendment by striking everything prior to line 89. So that is what we're speaking to now. It has been seconded. Let's go through the process. Speaker at mic 8, you're speaking to the amendment.
Main motion.
Speaker at mic 11, are you speaking to the amendment?
Main motion.
4.
Separate amendment.
5.
Main motion.
3.
Main motion.
7.
Amendment of the main motion.
6.
Main motion.
12.
To the motion, I speak and I rise to speak for the motion that was just made. Eric Rogers, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
You're speaking to the motion to strike.
Yes,
go ahead.
Absolutely. In the scripture is clear that in the abundance of words, sin is not lacking. We have seen that this morning, and I believe that we all agree with what needs to be done, and we're getting bogged down in the minutia, and this will help us just get to the main point. My brother is absolutely correct. You're awesome, bro. And I wish I had a dad as cool as yours. I was raised without a dad, but we're not going to talk about that right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Then are you ready to vote then on this amendment? All right. All in favor of the amendment by striking as it has been explained to you, let it be known. I hear a question at mic 1.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Milam, North Georgia. Just for clarification, in the striking, does this also include the amendment that was made to define employees?
I believe that
I didn't hear it.
It was accepted earlier, and somebody help me catch up. It will be included, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Did I hear another question? All right, we're ready then to vote on this amendment of striking. All in favor of the amendment, let it be known by standing. please, brothers, let me complete the vote. You may be seated. All opposed to the amendment, would you stand? It is your right. All right, and the amendment carries. We are now back to the main motion. Let me ask our team, please, to put on my screen the main motion as it now exists, so that we are reading it correctly. All right, we are back to the main motion, gentlemen, with the approved amendments. We're ready to continue our discussion. Let me catch up, please. All right, what we have is we commit that all Church of God leaders, ministers, teachers, and employees, defined as credentialed employees or any employees connected with conveying the message of the church and carrying out its mission, not be employed by or regularly attend LGBTQIA+ affirming or affiliated churches or religious organizations. That appropriate Church of God departments curate biblical sex education resources designed principally and practically for use in Church of God regions, churches, and educational institutions. That is now the main motion. We go to speaker at mic 8. You're speaking to the motion.
I pass.
There is a point of order. State your point of order.
Mr. Moderator, same person. I believe there's an omission that was not amended, and that would be at line 93 and 94. What's left out is subject to appropriate polity action. The addition to the appropriate Church of God departments, curate and biblical sex and so forth was added. It did not strike what's on line.
Your point.
Subject.
Your point of order is well taken. We will make that correction now. Please give us a moment to make that correction, and then we will resume debate. Let me commend the member's watchful eye there. Thank you. All right, have we caught up? Let me commend our secretarial staff, our assistants. They are doing a great job. Are we ready? Okay, I think we continue. You see the main motion with the correction. So now we move through our speaker. Speaker at mic 11, speaking to the motion.
Dustin Elder, Cleveland, Tennessee. Mr. Moderator, I am speaking against this motion. I wholeheartedly believe with everyone in here that the LGBTQ lifestyle is utterly unbiblical and ungodly. I firmly believe that a faithful and honest reading of Scripture can lead to no other conclusion on this matter. However, I feel I must oppose this motion for some of the reasons that have already been stated here today. First, this motion, even as it stands now, is redundant. We passed 2 years ago a motion that prohibits affirming or encouragement of the LGBTQ lifestyle. Brothers, at a certain point, we have to ask ourselves, how many times do we need to pass the same motion? Secondly, this motion has the appearance of a knee-jerk reaction to a single controversial issue occurring a few months ago. Regardless of what issue we might need to address or how vital it is to the life and health of the church, a knee-jerk reaction cannot be the way we address it. Knee-jerk reactions have a way of signifying fear. Brothers, fear is not how we move forward. Fear is not how we lead. And when our decisions are based on fear, History has shown us that those decisions are rarely wise. Finally, because of the limitations imposed by this motion, I have strong concerns about what the passage of the motion could lead to. Are we going to have limitations on what kinds of books our ministers can read? Are we going to have limitations on what kind of conferences or meetings can be attended? Are we going to have limitations on what kind of educational institutions can be attended? This motion, if passed, places strong limits on our ability to have dialogue, meaningful dialogue, with those who disagree with us. We create a situation where the only ones with whom we can have any kind of dialogue are the ones who agree 100% with us. That kind of a situation causes us to look a little more like a sect than a church, and that is not who we've been called to be. For these reasons, I must oppose this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We go to speaker at mic number 4.
Yeah, I rise to offer an amendment.
Let's hear the amendment, please.
All right, I want to make sure I'm putting this in the right place now. It would be to strike everything in line 4 following the word attend through the comma at the end of that right before subject to appropriate polity action, and replacing it with churches or religious organizations who hold stances on human sexuality contrary to biblical teaching, the minutes of the General Assembly of the Church of God, the Declaration of Faith, or the practical commitments of the Church of God. And if I have a second, I will speak to the rationale for that.
There is a second.
All right, I will make this short and sweet because we've had a lot of conversation on this already. At the beginning of this is titled that we are talking about biblical sexuality. One of the primary concerns that has been voiced over and over again is those in the homosexual lifestyle are being singled out by this. By making this change, we broadly address our stance on biblical sexuality to address the full gamut of sexual sin, be they heterosexual or homosexual, and fully address every stance, every statement that has already been made on this topic. Let's move this forward. Let's take a vote on this. Let's make something that will matter for our denomination moving forward to allow us to proceed with addressing things that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Member. Let me ask you to please repeat your amendment. I want to make sure we're catching everything that you've said.
Absolutely. So that we would strike following the word attend, starting with LGBTQIA+, through the comma in the end of that portion, replacing that so as to read that they would not regularly attend churches or religious organizations who hold stances on human sexuality contrary to biblical teaching, to the minutes of the General Assembly of the Church of God, the Declaration of Faith, or the practical commitments of the Church of God, subject to appropriate polity action.
All right, you've heard the amendment. This is where we will give our attention now. Speak to the amendment. Let's go to speaker at mic 5. Are you speaking to the amendment?
No, sir.
Speaker at mic 3, are you speaking to the amendment? Speaker at mic 6, are you speaking to the amendment?
No, sir.
Mic 9?
I'd like to make a amendment to that amendment. Let me just hold until this was dealt with, and I'll make an amendment later.
Let's hear the amendment.
I recommend we strike, and if we don't hear, I'll bring it back, so I'm thinking I better just hold it till we get rid of this one.
I appreciate your wisdom. Let's move on. Speaker at mic 1, you have a question?
Yeah, I move for a previous question on all business before the House.
Is there a second? All right. It will require 2/3 of this body. Motion is previous question. Pardon me just one moment. Let me consult. We will entertain your move for previous question. However, before we do that, I do need that amendment stated one more time. We must have that for our staff here. Please, brother, would you come back to the mic? I think we're missing something somewhere. Mic 4.
Hold on, let me flip back through this long agenda. So that would change the line that says regularly attend, striking LGBTQI plus through the comma and replacing it so the section would read that they are not to regularly attend churches or religious organizations who hold stances on human sexuality contrary to biblical teaching, the minutes of the General Assembly of the Church of God, the Declaration of Faith, or the practical commitments of the Church of God.
All right, we're catching up. Thank you. I think we have it. All right, there is a point of order. State your point of order. At mic 5.
William Buttram, Memphis, Tennessee. I may be wrong, and if so, that would not be uncommon for me. But I believe that the previous question was the person came to the mic with a question, and coming to a mic for a question, you cannot make a motion. Am I incorrect in that? I might be incorrect, but I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
I don't think he asked the question when he got there. It's on my screen that it is a question. The chair is going to allow for it. Thank you, though. We have the motion before us. Let me make sure I understand. Previous question was on all business before the House. Please remind me. All right. So here we go. If you're in favor of previous question, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Previous question prevails. We are now moving toward the vote. You see the amendment as it is. All in favor of the amendment, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. Chair is in doubt. If you're in favor of the amendment, would you stand? Talking about the amendment only. You may be seated. If you're opposed to the amendment, would you stand? It is the opinion of the chair that the amendment carries. We will move now to voting on the entire item. The amendment now is part of the entire item. All business before the House, is that right? So we'll make sure again. All right, all in favor of the item as you now see it on the screen, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And the motion carries. Let me ask you to stand, please. We're approaching lunch. I want us to pray. I'm going to request, with your consent, that we move to our anchor desk in the live stream, and that my comments and my prayer request will be held within